Hello, and thanks for tuning in to Town Meeting TV's coverage of Town Meeting Day 2025. My name's Nick Tatakis. This program is part of a series of candidate forums hosted by Town Meeting TV in advance of the Town Meeting Day election on Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. These forums are made possible by Town Meeting TV's generous underwriting partners. You can find all our forums at cctv.org/TMD2025 or on our Town Meeting TV YouTube channel, where auto-generated captions are available. If you're tuning in on YouTube, click the subscribe button to stay tuned into local democracy this election season. On tonight's program, we'll hear from one candidate running for a 3-year term on the South Burlington City Council. That candidate's name is Tim Barrett. Thanks for joining us, Tim.
Thank you, Nick. It's my pleasure to be here tonight.
We've prepared a list of questions for you, and we'll ask you to answer those questions in about 90 seconds or so. We'll keep it loose tonight. But if you are tuning in live, you can call in with your questions at 802-862-3966. And if you do call in, we will do our best to prioritize your question. We'll screen calls to ensure that they're not repeated. And we ask that you share your name and the town that you live in. You can also submit questions for future forums online at that same website, cctv.org/TMD2025. And without further ado, we'll get started with an opening statement from you. Tim, what do you love about South Burlington, and why do you want to serve as a city councilor?
Well, what is there not to love about South Burlington is the first question. I've lived there over 32 years. Let me give you some background from me. So I was raised in the DC area. And then I moved to Brattleboro, spent 3 years there. Then I moved a year to Amherst. Then I moved to Martha's Vineyard and finished high school there. And then I went to the University of Rhode Island and got a bachelor's in electrical engineering. And then I hired directly into IBM in '81. It's now Global Foundries. I've been there almost 44 years. That's a long story. But in the meantime, I got married in '94, and I have 2 grown kids. One works at a startup in Boston. The other one was a teacher at the high school here. And I have served on the Library Board of Trustees for 6 years. And then I served on the Development Review Board in South Burlington for about 4.5 years, of which the last year I was the chairperson. And then I ran in 2016 for City Council, and I won that race. And I've been there for now 9 years. So I'm looking to run for another term of 3 years, hopefully to put in a 12-year complete run on the council. So the city is really, it's a diverse place. It's diverse in its geography and its people. We have a wonderful school system. We have a great network of bike paths, right? If you're a skier, or a biker or a walker, you can get from the ridge areas on Dorset Street down to Red Rocks pretty easily. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But it's just, I really enjoy the town.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing. On the topic of the city, I have a question for you about the city budget. Do you support the proposed city budget of $55.9 million with an estimated 3.3% increase in taxes? And are there any aspects of the city budget that you would have liked to see changed?
So to answer your question, yeah, I do support the budget. I think that Jessie Baker, the city manager, and her staff did an incredible job putting together something that sort of mimicked inflation, was pretty close. There are a lot of cost pressures on both educational systems and municipal systems, as you know right now. We're a little bit luckier because we didn't have any flood disasters like people down in the Winooski area. But with those pressures of inflation, we were very lucky because the folks in the finance office were able to, for one of the primary savings, was to make a small change to our health plan, which is a captive insurance plan. And they were able to, just like if you have a car and you have a deductible for collision, if it's $500, if you raise it to $1,000, your premium goes down. So they effectively did that through their reinsurers. They were able to raise that, quote, deductible and get a lower premium. So that lowered the health care cost that we would have seen, which is a driver for a lot of taxes around the state. And so that 3.33%, I've got a sheet here, is very fair. And just so everybody knows, the total tax rate increase is about 3.67 because don't forget we have two one-penny bond issues. One is called Penny for Paths, which is to do infrastructure building for all our bike paths. And the other one is Penny for Open Space. So those funds provide a penny on the tax rate to put into a bucket for open space to possibly purchase more open space in the city and try to conserve it.
Great, thanks so much. You alluded to earlier the school district in South Burlington, so I'll turn to a question about the school budget.
Sure.
Do you support this year's school budget of $71.5 million and the associated tax rate increase of 7.9%? And how would you address the challenges facing the state education fund and the impact on local schools and taxpayers?
Yeah, that's a really hard, it's a great question. All right. First of all, I do support the school's budget. I think they've put a lot of thought into how they can minimize their tax rate increase, and it's I don't know, it's somewhere around 8%, whatever it's going to be. It's in that range. They're under a lot of pressure. They have a lot of state sort of educational statutes they have to follow. And at the same time, they have to deal with a union, two unions, one for the teachers and one for administration, right? They're locked into those union contracts in terms of steps and increases. And then the number one driver probably of that is healthcare costs again, right? And the state is the entity that administers the healthcare insurance across all the teachers in the state. And for example, if you didn't know, a teacher in South Burlington with a family actually has a full cost of $40,000 in insurance premium that's paid 80% by the school and 20% by the employee. That's the most expensive plan, right, for a full family, and that those costs went up, I think, 12% this year. So healthcare has an enormous effect on school budgets across the state. The other problem is that, and as you know, Governor Scott has got a couple of proposals out there. They're wiping the vapor off the mirror to try to get some more details on that, right? And I don't know how the legislature is going to react to it, but the way that property tax rate is calculated is sort of a complex formula that includes the number of students you have in your school, right, divided into the budget, and that number of students might just not be the number of heads. It's the number of heads with a few extra parts of heads based upon what the needs of those students are. So those normalized population counts divide into the total budget, and then you have a yield number that's supplied by the state, and then you divide that by the CLA, which is a common level of appraisal. And what that is, it's a measure of this dispersion of the current market prices for homes versus what they're assessed at. And as you get further and further away from the norm, you get punished on your CLA and it increases your tax rate. And that's why we had to have a reappraisal in South Burlington in 2021. When you do that, that CLA goes to 100%, right? And now we're down into the high 70s, and so it just exacerbates, what that tax rate increase will be. So that's one of the things I worry about is that older couple that are in a home whose kids are gone. They've been there for 40 years. They bought it for $250,000, and now it's assessed at $500,000 or $550,000, and they're being forced to pay taxes on that. Whereas somebody that comes into the city, comes from out of state, pays out-of-pocket cash, $1 million for a home, but that home might have an assessment of $800,000. I don't know if that's quite fair. Maybe they should be paying tax. The assessment should snap up to whatever the purchase price. That's something that I think the legislature needs to look at, because one thing I don't want to do is to punish people that have been in homes for 30, 40, 50 years unfairly versus people that are buying homes fresh.
Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that, yeah. The next question I have relates to another thing that I think is on a lot of South Burlington residents' minds, your constituents' minds, the opioid crisis that we're facing, people in the throes of substance use disorder, and for many people, this relates to the topic of law enforcement. And as we're talking, it's a few hours after hearing that South Burlington's Police Chief Sean Burke will be joining the Burlington Police Department. And so I guess I have a question for you about addiction and the opioid crisis, and what your thoughts are on the most important initiatives South Burlington can take to address this crisis, and any thoughts you have on the news about Sean Burke's transition, I guess, back to the Burlington Police Department.
When we snagged Sean Burke from BPD to SBPD, we were very happy because we know a professional police and a person that has the ability to lead, which is really important, right? And he has done a great job when he replaced Trevor Whipple for our police force. And when I heard the news yesterday, I was not surprised. And I'm sad that he'll be leaving our department, and I'm sure that his officers will be too. On the other hand, it's really important that Burlington have a really good police chief, and I cannot emphasize that enough. That police department has been through a lot of turmoil since 2019, starting with the protests that happened in Battery Park. There have been a lot of officers that have left the force. They've had a hard time to recruit. I think with a new mayor and a new police chief and somebody with his caliber, I think that's the right direction to go. And when a city like Burlington, does better, because of that, I think the whole area, the greater Burlington area does better. And I think that you'll probably, hopefully see improvements. And also because of his ability to lobby, with the forces in the legislature about the judiciary, because I know there are a lot of problems there, right? And everybody has talked about that for a while. And then as for opioid, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the Chittenden Clinic, right, which is the primary Suboxone methadone clinic, is right on Dorset Street in South Burlington, right? In fact, it's less than 600 feet away from our middle school, high school. And back in 2017, when it was proposed to put that clinic in there was a huge amount of residential resistance and school district resistance, right? And it took a while to subside. It went away, when all the permits were granted, because there was nothing wrong with those permits being issued. And now you wouldn't even know that you have a methadone clinic there at all. And I know that it's so important to provide that type of addiction, service to individuals who have gotten to the point where they're ready for treatment, right? You still have a population of people that are not at that point yet. And I don't know what the right path is to get them there, but I think that we need to do better. I wish I had an expert to help me out with that, so.
Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts nonetheless. I guess it kind of relates. You're talking about services and the landscape that's on Dorset Street and other parts of, I guess what I would call maybe downtown South Burlington or the city of South Burlington.
Thank you for saying that. The city center.
The city center, thank you. And I want to ask you a question about development in South Burlington. What is an example of development in South Burlington that you're proud of? And what role should the city council play in guiding new development across the city? Good
question. In 2017, the City Council shared the cost of buying about 25 lawn signs that said, "Vote yes on the TIF," which is the Tax Increment Finance District, right? Because we put it before the voters in 2017 on town meeting day, and it passed, right? And because of that, when you drive down Market Street, you see Allard Square, which is a CHT senior, 4-story senior home facility. You see the new library, City Hall for South Burlington. And folks, if you haven't been to the South Burlington Library, please come pay a visit. There's free parking behind. There are about 7 EV charging stations, charge point level 2s, if you want to use them. It's a beautiful library. It's 2 floors. There's children's space, and there's this beautiful, gorgeous, stained glass blue clock that's at the midpoint on the stairwell. And as you continue down Market Street, you'll notice that it's almost like a canyon now, right? Because it's filled in with 4-story buildings on either side. And the Medical Center and UVM have both sponsored construction projects for rental units, right, that are market rate. And then we also have the Garden Street apartments, which are affordable. And then there's Dover Place, and there's another building going up too as you go down Garden Street. So when you talk about what has South Burlington done to promote adding housing, right? You look at City Center, and there's an enormous number of units being added there, and it's in a dense area, and it's on the bus line, right? And one thing that municipalities love is they love large buildings with lots of units inside, because the number of city services needed to service it is proportionally less than when you have to travel 5 miles out of town and plow 2 miles of residential roads for lots that are like a third of an acre with a 2,200 square foot colonial on it, right?
Yeah.
Which there is some of that's still being built. If you go out Heinsberg Road, there's a project called Edgewood, which is actually Cider Mill 2. I think it's like 130 units. It'd be a mixture of duplexes and single-family homes. I've gone there. I've talked to people. Our new energy codes have affected the way those buildings are constructed to make them tighter. And in fact, they have 2 heating systems, right? They have a natural gas forced hot air system, but they also have a dual heat pump, right? So that can be used to either cool or heat the building. And the last time I talked to people when it was starting to get cold, it's like they hadn't touched the natural gas switch, which might happen automatically when it gets too cold, right? They were just, switching over to the heat pump for a little bit of heat at night.
Yeah.
So that, and we're not done yet, right? If you go down Kennedy Drive and look up to the side, you'll see the O'Brien Hillside. You'll see 2 large brick buildings of 47 units each, which is the Summit Properties, which is all affordable. In fact, some of the units are for homeless people. To the right of that is a large development that they've already worked on. On the backside of that hill, they're going to build a completely electric single-family home development, right? And it'll be the first of its kind, all electric. And the homes will be tighter and more energy efficient, and they'll all be heat pumps. So, and then we're not done. There's more coming. Like, where the Pizza Hut is?
Yes.
On Shelburne Road? Who doesn't know where the Pizza Hut is on Shelburne Road with all the graffiti on it, right? Okay, so if you notice, there's a big fence around that now. And that's a recent development, right? And I could go on for 20 minutes about that applicant, that developer, and the problems they've had trying to get that property developed. Some of them are their own problems, not the city's problems, right? But that they're going to get their permits eventually, and they're going to tear that down. It's going to be a mixture of a little bit of commercial, and in the back building where Bourne's Auto used to be, will be, I think, a 3-story building with residential. Yeah.
That's exciting. Lots of roof beams being raised high.
Yeah. And the city has done a lot of work to manage their land development regulations so that they added more inclusionary units. They required more affordable units, when there's a large project, right? And on top of that, you had Act 87 and Act 181 that the state brought down to us a couple years ago, which said, hey, if you've got an area served by water and sewer, then you really have to increase the allowed density. So we had a certain density level that we allowed. They said, no, you got to bring it up to here. So then we had to go change our LDRs to make it equal to that. And that work has been done, and so there's a little bit that the city can do, and then there's more that the developers can do. The problems are the expense of land, the expense of construction, because UVM decided not to build behind the DoubleTree, unfortunately, and they would have built a whole nice dorm back there. So
yeah. Well, we are getting close to the end of our time here today. Can you believe it? I want to ask you one last question that kind of relates to the folks involved in the development of South Burlington, and it's on climate change. You alluded to heat pumps and other energy-efficient technologies. And the city recently hired a climate manager to assist in overseeing climate action throughout all of the city initiatives. And how will you, as a city councilor and as a council together, pursue those goals?
Yeah, that's a great question. I met with Bettina Miguez yesterday for about an hour just to get to talk to her about what her approach might be and what my personal approach would be. What kinds of things would I think that she would want to do? And we overlapped, I think, on a lot of those ideas. I think she has a very large plate, and it's going to be covered with a lot of food. And the first thing I think was that we have to get our own house in order. So it'd be great to have the city to be able to collect enough data to understand, what are we burning? How much are we burning? How often are we burning it, right? What do we do to burn less? Oh, we're going to buy 4 Hyundai Kona, is it Hyundai or maybe Kia Kona electric vehicles, right? To replace some old vehicles. Great, boom, done, right? What about some of the buildings that we have that are older that could be converted to heat pump, right? Or if they're on natural gas, do they need to be refurbished so that they're more energy efficient, right? More insulation, reduce the air infiltration, stuff like that. So there's a lot of measurements, I think, that we need to collect data for so we can understand our current state and set a path for a future state where we burn less, right? Because, I mean, climate change, we just got to stop burning stuff is the first thing, right? I think everybody's got a role, whoever you are, whether you're a residential person or you own a car, whatever your ability is. If you can take the bus, that's better. If you can afford a level 2 charger and an EV, go for it, right?
Thank you for all of that. Thank you for your thoughtful answers. We have a few seconds left. Do you have any final thoughts for the residents of South Burlington you'd like to share?
Yeah, I just want to say my imaginary opponent right here, who doesn't exist, is because I'm running unopposed. And I'm thankful for that, but it's also a little disappointing because it's always good to have at least 2 people in a campaign so they can get ideas out on the table, let people see what their differences are. I'm grateful that I'm running unopposed because you know what it means? It means there will be fewer lawn signs. And if when it's time to put the lawn signs out, I pledge not to put more than 10. I'll put no more than 10 out, okay?
All right.
And on election day, even though I'm unopposed, you will see me out in front of each of the campaign locations, right? I will be out there in 3 coats and a pair of boots with 4 wool pairs of socks, saying hi to all the voters. And I appreciate the support I've had over the years. I'm looking forward to putting in another 3 years to work for the residents and for the city staff to achieve the best possible outcomes, and to try to adhere to our city plan as close as we can. And to work well with the other city councilors. We have a really good group of councilors, and we have a diverse range of opinions on things, and we don't always vote 5-0. Sometimes it's 3-2, sometimes it's 4-1, and I love that because I want people to say, that's not what I want to do, I want to do something different. So,
thank you so much for being here tonight, Tim. It's been great to hear your thoughts and your appreciation and love for South Burlington. It's great. And thank you for tuning in to Town Meeting TV's ongoing coverage of local candidates, budgets, and ballot items. You can find this and more, and many more forums, I should say, at cctv.org/TMD2025 or on our Town Meeting TV YouTube channel. And don't forget to cast your ballot on Town Meeting Day on or before March 4th. And then tune into Town Meeting TV's results recap show that evening. You can contact your local clerk to find out how to obtain a ballot and to register to vote. And remember, in Vermont, you can register to vote on Election Day. Thank you for watching and sharing Town Meeting TV. Good night.